Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. This is going to be a very unique and different kind of webinar. I have a very special guest on with us today. So John Murphy is joining us. And John, I thought you were here in the United States, but you're not even in the United States. Where are you? Where are you at right now?
Right now, I am sitting in the south of France, where I live.
South of France. That sounds so much nicer than where I am in Florida.
Well, you know, it's pretty good. It's nice here right now. We're getting a nice autumn. And looking forward to, because I'm down the south, so near the Pyrenees, so looking forward to getting a bit of snow in the next month or so, where we might start a bit of skiing.
That's nice. Well, skiing and snow is something I'm unfamiliar with down here in Tampa, Florida.
No, not too. You don't see too much of it in Tampa, Florida.
No, we could water ski right now, but snow skiing is completely off limits for us.
As close as you're going to get.
Well, I'm really excited you're going to join us today. We're going to be able to go over a lot of cool stuff, it sounds like. I looked through your presentation. So the 5 C's of a high-performance team, which I think is powerful because, you know, this is something that a lot of our clients are looking for is, you know, how do they find good talent? What do they do to really build a high-performance team? So I'm just really glad that you're able to come on with us today because I think you've got a lot to share that our audience is really going to enjoy.
Well, no, I'm delighted to do it. I mean, as you know, we've spoken before, and you know, I work with a lot of senior teams in some very large organizations, and I mean, I've worked for a number of very large multinationals, the likes of Pfizer, Vodafone, you know, Johnson & Johnson, State Street Bank, Airbus. So, but I've also worked with smaller companies that would be much more kind of the entrepreneurial side. Some of them with startups, some of them that would be around for a number of years. And I'd have to say that, you know, what I'm going to talk about is very applicable really wherever you are in that spectrum. So, I mean, the fundamentals still stay the same. At the end of the day, you know, when you look at a business and you look at building a business, you're going to deliver profit through a team, you know, not just because of one individual or one idea or, you know, one product, whatever it might be. It's going to be the team that will deliver the real profit to you. So, you know, whether you're talking about a multinational or whether you're talking about, you know, a smaller business or a startup business, you know, what I'm going to talk about is every bit as applicable, Ty. I can honestly tell you that.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I mean, I think it's great because with your experience at companies like Johnson & Johnson, I mean, you've worked with a lot of high caliber companies. So you've seen exactly how they do this. And, you know, some of the books that I'm reading now actually are talking about that exact same thing about, you know, these massive training programs they have and, you know, how elaborate they are. So I think it's great that you're going to be able to share some experience coming from the big world, you know, being able to coach and advise in those big, larger institutions, and then even be able to work with the smaller entrepreneur and know kind of what works in both worlds. So I'm really, really excited that you're able to come on and share this with us today.
The interesting thing, Ty, is that, you know, it's the same issues. You know, they don't change hugely because people are people. The issues are kind of pretty much the same right across the board. It's about getting that team working together. And if you do that, then you've really got a great chance of building a fantastic business.
That's great. That's great. Well, look, without any further delay, you know, we'll go ahead and have you get started with the show. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have a live audience today. This will be put on our YouTube channel, which we get, you know, a lot of views there. We'll even have this on our iTunes channel. So for years to come, our audience will be listening to you. So again, I really appreciate you coming on. I know it's really early there now. So.
It's late. It's the other way around.
It's late. It's like 7 at night right now there.
It is 6 o'clock in the evening for me. So, but I'm delighted to be here. Can you see my screen and can you see my slides?
Yeah, I can see your screen great. Now, for anybody that's on here, if I'm talking, you're going to see an image of me. And when he's talking, you're going to see his slideshow. So I think you all at the bottom of your screen might have the ability to click between one of us. And if you click on him, you'll actually be able to see his slideshow. So we're going to try this out. We'll see how it works. It's the first time I've ever actually been on camera doing one of these webinars. So hopefully my mug isn't offensive to any of the people on here today. And let's jump in, man. I can see your slideshow good, so if you want to get it started, let's go.
Okay, great. Well, and I said, you know, very much want this to be interactive. So anything you want to jump in, anything you want to question, anything you want to, you know, kind of discuss a bit further, Ty, just jump in. This is not meant as a monologue. What I've put together here, which is really trying to condense everything that I talk about into a very simple message and simple process that people can follow, because I'm a great believer that when we do sessions like this, Ty, that people should be able to take the message that is there and do something with it this week.
Yes.
And that they can put it into practice, and they can actually start doing things that will make a difference in their team. And this is very much about this. I'm not saying that you will resolve everything around in 1 week, but you can certainly kick the ball off, and you can get moving in doing something this week that's going to improve the performance of the team. And of course, with every team, it's an ongoing situation. It's not a one and done, and you do a series of exercises, a series of meetings, and that's it, it's finished. Teams evolve, teams grow, teams develop, but also at the same time, teams develop bad habits, because I'm a great believer in Patrick Lencioni's work and a book that he wrote a number of years ago, which he titled The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which I think is a great title. And the reason he refers to the 5 dysfunctions of a team is that, people are fundamentally dysfunctional. We all are. And so when we come together, we've got to accept that it isn't a perfect combination, and we've got to work with what we have to get what we want to get. So let me just kind of go into it. I said I'll go through these and jump in as where you want to do. The first one is
now, John, it might actually help. Can you hit the slideshow button to make that your entire screen? Is that a possibility, just so it's bigger for everybody to see?
That seems to be my entire screen.
Okay, then that's good. That's good. I thought that usually if you this is showing all the slides, but usually if you hit that slideshow at the top, that'll actually trigger the slideshow.
I'll go back and do the slideshow there. That is showing it as on my screen as kind of just that one slide.
That's good. Okay, so it works good as long as everybody can see it. And just so you know, the chat's open the whole time. So if you have questions, go ahead and type them in for either one of us. We'll make sure they're answered. If you have any audio issues, video issues, if you're not able to see anything, just type them into the chat. We can have conversations with you through the chat as we're actually going through this. So apologize for jumping in without any further delay. Go ahead. Let's get in. Let's get started.
The first C is to create the vision. Very often when you hear somebody like me who's a coach and a consultant talking about vision, people kind of go a bit glassy-eyed and kind of feel, oh God, here's another consultant talking about vision. And I'm not talking about the sort of vision that when you walk into businesses and you see their vision in the reception area up on a magnificent looking pallet or whatever it might be. To me, that's not what I'm talking about. It can be that, but in my experience, most organizations that have that don't necessarily live it. And that's just my opinion. But when I'm talking about creating the vision, I'm talking about for the people who are starting the business, who are driving the business, to have a clear vision of where they want to get to. So this is not about getting a clever logo or a clever tagline or any marketing line or anything like that. This is just really being clear, in 3 or 5, 10 years time, this is what we want this business to look like. And why is that important? The reason that it's important is that gives you the context for every decision. Because as you go through a business, and no matter how much you plan, and we'll talk about planning and all of that sort of stuff, but it doesn't go in a straight line, because the markets change, opportunities come up, something changes, the demands change along the way. So you've got to kind of shift your plan as you go. But if you've got a clear vision, it's a bit like having your North Star, then it's very clear as to exactly the direction that you want to go in. And that gives you the context for deciding whether the decision to do A is right or B is right. That's what allows you to make the decision, because you're clear on the vision and you're clear that making that decision will take me closer to it, or making this other decision actually will take me further away from that. The other part is, the other reason that vision is hugely important is that fundamentally as individuals, we all want to walk behind some banner. We all want to belong to some movement. We all want to be engaged in something that's going to be exciting and that's going to be motivating. And that's why the vision is important. And when people are buying into a vision, they're not buying into some kind of left-brained, clever, one-line marketing tag. They're buying into the passion that is behind it. They're buying into the excitement that's behind it. They're buying into the adventure that they're going to embark upon. And that's why creating the vision is just so fundamentally important. And when you're talking about vision, that is the job of the leaders in the business, is to create the vision and then to live that vision day in, day out. And when you're talking to organizations, you very quickly identify those organizations that have got the vision nailed and those organizations that are just very vague in it. So the number one C is about creating that vision. And if you haven't got the vision, then I would say spend some time with your team, and don't get hung up on that. Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it structured the right way? Should it be 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 10 sentences? Just create the vision that is right for you. Just, it is about simply saying, what does this business look like in 3, 5, 10 years, whatever the time horizon is. So that's number one C, is to create the vision.
And I think that's one of the most important. I mean, I am baffled of the people I speak to that in life and in business have no idea where they're going. It completely baffles me. Like, if you ask them a question of where do you plan on being in 3 years, they are stunned. If you ask them a question of what is their end goal, what is it they're ultimately trying to accomplish, they just don't know. And to me, in life and in business, if the first step, like you said here, is knowing clearly where you are trying to get to, knowing the goal of where you want to end up. And then I think, as you're about to show, once you know where you're going, it's so much easier to work backwards to be able to develop the path to get there. And I think that so many people get caught in the whirlwind of path to get where they're going that they don't clearly know where they're going. And in my life, especially if you get lost in what you're doing in business, this really is the first step. Figure out where you're going, and the rest of things kind of fall into play once you know that, from my experience. So I love that. I completely agree that this is the number one thing everybody should be doing, not just entrepreneurs, but in life.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing I'd say is that what it helps you do is to avoid what I call the shiny new toy syndrome. So that every good idea comes along that you grab onto. I see other people doing this. I see so-and-so is doing that, and they're making a success of it. And you're grabbing onto that, but you end up, running down so many cul-de-sacs. And, all those cul-de-sacs will kind of make sense to you at a certain level if you don't have a vision, because you don't know where you're going. So any road will take you there, that old saying. And it's so, so true. And in business, we have got a limited amount of resource. Now, whether that is time, money, or people, but it doesn't make any difference whether you're a one-person business or you're a 10,000-person business. You have got constraint of time, money, and people. And you've got to make sure that you're leveraging those resources to the best of your ability. And the context for deciding is this the best use of that resource? Does it get me closer to the vision? And as you say, Ty, it's on an individual and also on on an overall kind of life and business perspective that we really need to do that. So the number one C is to create the vision. The second one is choose the team. When you've got, and I say, well, what if I already have a team? Well, let me come back to that. But it's actually looking at the vision that you have, and it's about understanding then, okay, well, what do I need? What are the skills that I need to drive this business forward? And what does happen very, very regularly is that we have just, people have come in and have joined the organization, and then they've kind of stayed with us for a period of time. But then when we create a vision and we're looking at the sort of skills that we need to drive the team, we suddenly see there's kind of a, not quite a fit between either the people that we have or the skills that we have in order to achieve the vision and to deliver on the business. And we've really got two options there. The two options are, do I upskill the people to acquire the skills, or do I change the people? And the other part of choosing the team is that it's not about going out and hiring or putting together a bunch of superstars just because they're superstars. You've got to figure out, will this group of people work together in order to achieve the objective? And we've all seen in kind of sporting analogies where, a club or whatever it might be goes out and buys a bunch of superstars and puts them together, but they don't necessarily play as a team, and they don't necessarily function as a team. so they don't get the results that they want to get. So you've got to be very, very clear about, have I got the right people in the right slots doing the right work? And are they going to be able to work together in order to achieve the overall objective? And it's a continuous process that you go through, is that, are they've got the right people doing the right job with the right set of skills? And of course, you can always upskill a team. That's not an issue. That's an investment in them and your own future. But you've got to make sure that you've got the right team in place in order to deliver. Because how that team behaves, and I'll come on to something else which relates directly to this, how that team works will determine how all of the people in your business work. Because that is the team that sets the tone for everything in your business. And that's so crucially important. And for some people, hearing me say, well, if you haven't got the right people, well, then you've got to find the right people. That seems like a very harsh message to deliver. But it is a reality. It is a fact of life. And I've seen it particularly, in businesses where maybe a couple of friends come together and then they bring in maybe one or two relatives and something like that. And suddenly we've got this group of people and we're saying they're the team. But when you look at them and analyze them, they just don't have the right skill set to deliver on the objective. So this is where you do have to be, pretty clear and pretty decisive about the team of people that you have, and really, really set about choosing that team carefully to make sure you've got the right people with the right skills, with the right attitude, with doing the job in the way that you want them to do it. And that is so true, because then once you've got that team together, then you work as the leader of the business, you work with them to engage them in the vision so that they are all lined up and, aiming in the same direction and working cohesively together.
Yeah, and I think those two things go perfectly together. And you ended up saying what I was just getting ready to say, which is, with how we do business, we have a tribe. We have a following. We have a tribe of people that are passionate about what we do in business credit building. And that's because we have a clear vision. Our vision is to make sure every entrepreneur knows that business credit is available to them. And that's been our vision. And I think what caught me unexpected was, with that clear vision, we've been able to build this whole tribe, which wasn't our intention, but that's what happened because they saw the vision. So I think this goes so well with the first one, because when you have a clear vision of what you're going and you're passionate about that vision, then it's much easier to attract a team to actually follow and want to execute upon that vision as well. So this goes really well with your first point, because when you have a clear vision of where you're going, then what happens is you really build a tribe of followers that wants to be part of that vision you've set forth. And I think that's really important. It's been really important in our business with building a good power team.
Yeah, and it's interesting because all of these are connected to each other. And when you look at, I was doing some work with a company some time ago, and going up and said, okay, no, we've done the vision bit, so we're all clear on the vision and the mission and all of that, so we don't need to address that. Let's deal with some other issues. And I was working with the team, and I suddenly got a sense of, God, I'm not too sure that all of these people are really clear about the vision. I just had a sense that they weren't all kind of rowing in the same direction. And it wasn't that there was a kind of a major issue, but I just didn't feel that it was kind of fitting together. And what I did at a coffee break was that I said to them, after a coffee break, I said, okay, on large Post-its, I want you to write down what your interpretation is of the vision. I said, I know that you've done this work. I've been told that you've done it. I wasn't part of doing this piece of work, but I want you to put down on paper and on this Post-it, what you say. And there were 6 or 7 people in the room. So they did that, and you could see a bit of head scratching going on. But they did it, and they put it up on the wall. And I tell you, Ty, it was frightening, right? This was work they said they had done probably about 3, 4, 5 weeks before this, right? The difference in what they wrote down was incredible. And the lesson for me and for everybody is, just because you have gone through an exercise once, don't think that everybody has got it. Because we all take in information at a different pace, at a different rate. The penny will drop at different times. And the reason that the team was not aligned was because they weren't aligned on the vision. So, you know, if they're not aligned on the vision, they can't possibly be aligned on what they're doing in the business. So, you know, a great lesson to learn that, you know, all of these are not 5 separate things. They all knit together. I just broken them out in this way so I can explain them, but every one feeds into the other. And it's really important you do that. And also, I just repeat the point I just made. Just because you go through an exercise with your team like this once, doesn't mean it's done and dusted. You've got to go back and do it again and again and again. And that's how you reinforce it. That's how you make it come alive.
I love it. Absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. And I can imagine doing a similar exercise, you know, because as entrepreneurs and leaders, we have a tendency to go in the direction that we know we want to go, but sometimes not, you know, very well voice that to our team. And you say that, and I cringe at the thought of if I went to our team and asked them clearly what our vision was, of what some of them may say. You're right. It's not something you can set out forth in the beginning with even a mission statement. It's something that you have to really support throughout, you know, the running of the business. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, and it's always got to be kind of reflected back and talked about in the business. It's got to become part of your conversation, which leads me into the third one, which is culture. We determine the culture. Now, when people talk about culture, and people go into very abstract descriptions and definitions of what we mean by culture. And to me, what culture, if I want to know what the culture of any business, if I want to know the culture of your business, Ty, I just go in and listen to the conversation. I listen to what people are talking about, whether it's at the proverbial water cooler, whether it's down in the local coffee shop when they all come together at the local bar. The conversation, the language that people use, how they interact with each other, that's the culture. It doesn't matter what else you might want to talk about, but that's the culture. And when you're looking at your team, I said you've created the vision, you've chosen your team, you now have got to work with the team to determine the culture. How is this team going to work together? And, you know, and you really have got to work at defining exactly what that might be. And let me just kind of play with this a little bit, Ty. When I'm talking about this, I'm saying, if you want to know about how a team is behaving, do a very simple exercise. Get them to actually write down individually the last 12 months. What have been the successes of this team? Just let them do it individually. The reason I want them to do it individually first, before we get everyone to share it, is that if you do this as a group, the first 1, 2, or 3 will determine the rest of them. Okay, because that puts you on a kind of a path of in your own head. So I want everyone to kind of do this without kind of interference from anybody else. So just get them to spend a couple of minutes doing what the accomplishments are and put that up in the flip chart and just kind of get everyone to kind of put it up there. So now we're seeing what everybody perceives as the accomplishments. And it'll be interesting because people will have forgotten some of the accomplishments. They won't all be the same. Some people will not have recognized that, you know, what one person thinks is accomplishment, maybe somebody else just completely passed them by. So that's one thing. And then the second part of that exercise is to say, okay, well, tell me now about the disappointments in the last 12 months, as best you can. Doesn't matter the period of time, but give or take 12 months. And do exactly the same thing. Get them to do it on their own. Then get them to put it up on the flip chart. You can capture them on the flip chart. And when you look at those series of flip charts, you can actually say, the reason we had those successes was because of how we did things around here, how we did things as a team. The reason we had the disappointments was also how we did things as a team. So what do we learn? What do we learn from that? What do we learn about how we behave as a team? And that's your culture. So that tells you about the sort of culture you have in the organization. So now when you're looking in the future and you're looking at your vision, then you're saying, well, if that's the culture, what way are we going to behave as a team to make sure that if we were doing the same exercise in 12 months' time, we certainly don't list the same disappointments, and we've got better accomplishments. And that's what we talk about the culture. It's really important to get people to sign up to a way of behaving as a team, because how the top team in a business, and it truthfully does not matter, Ty, whether that is a 5-man business, a 10-man business, or it's a 5,000-man business. How that top team behaves with each other is how everybody in the organization behaves, and how they behave not only with each other, but how they also behave with customers. And it's a really important point. And culture is not a kind of an abstract, esoteric, complicated intellectual exercise. The culture is simply the conversation, how we behave with each other, how we deal with each other, how we support each other, how we challenge each other, because challenging is good, and how we actually make sure that we serve each other in the way. And we've got to find, each organization has got to find its own language around that culture, so that, again, that becomes part of the folklore.
Yeah, I love that. Before you move to your next slide, also make sure that your slide deck is on the right side, because I think I'm still seeing that we're on Create the Vision on yours. Not sure. I've got it pulled up on my end too, but just to make sure everybody can follow okay. Perfect. Now you're good. Determine the culture. Maybe you were good before. Maybe it was just on mine.
All right. Okay. So, yeah. Trying to see if I can go to the next slide on that. Let me just go across. And
if anybody's having any problem, they can click mine too, because I have it pulled up.
Okay. I'm just trying to get to the next slide. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
You might have to click on the fourth slide on the left-hand side, because I don't think your slideshow is running. So if you click on the slide on the left-hand side, that should pull it up too.
Okay, let me just do that. It's not clicking up there. Let me just go back out of that. You see that, coach the team?
Perfect. I got it.
Okay, I had to do a bit of a workaround. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
You can see that. Okay, so coach the team. The fourth one is you've got to coach the team. And why do I say coach? People use the term coaching and managing interchangeably. And to me, that's a nonsense. And, my background, as we've talked about before, Ty, I was in the corporate world for many years before I started my own business. And, when I became a manager for the first time and got into the job, I mean, I was like everybody else. I managed other people the way I'd been managed, which was on numbers and stats and calls and etc., all that sort of stuff. And there was no culture of coaching. And somebody I was very lucky to a mentor of mine said to me, well, how much time are you investing in coaching? I kind of went, oh, well, I managed. And he said, no, coaching. And I kind of looked, I kind of realized I don't really know the difference between the two of these. And he said something to me which has kind of stuck with me all of my life, where he said, you coach and lead people and you manage things. And that is so true. Because when you're talking about, you manage process, you manage output, you manage, stats, you manage, the process, whatever it might be. But when you're talking about, you really want to build and grow the team, then you've got to coach the team. You've got to coach the individuals. And it's about, you're coaching them to get to places that they've never been before. You've got to coach them to be, greater than the sum of the individual parts. And that's so true with the team. A team has got to be greater than the sum of the individual parts. And how you achieve that is through coaching. That's how you achieve it. By coaching them, by getting them to find solutions, by just working with them to find out what is it, the objectives they have, where do they want to be, where do they want to grow to, what skills do they need to develop, where are they going to become better in 12 months' time, 2 years' time than they are today, and what role are you playing in doing that? So coaching the team is just critically important. And it's not about just managing how many widgets or what was your sales performance or how many did you process today. That's managing. Yes, we've got to do the managing as well. I'm not saying you don't do the managing. But what I am saying is that you've got to get into that coaching mode. And I can tell you from my own experience as a CEO, you get much more from a team from coaching than you do from managing. But it's a different approach, and it's a different mindset, and it's a different sort of meeting. Yes, you can have management meetings where you're going through the stats and the figures and the turnover and the revenue and the profit, and they're all perfectly valid things to do. But you also have to allocate and dedicate and commit to giving time to coaching the team so that they are going to build their skills, build their attitudes, and they're going to make sure that they are working effectively together as a team. That makes sense to you?
Makes perfect sense to me. Absolutely. I like that. I mean, there's a big difference between management and coaching, and that's just so true.
Okay, and the fifth one is continuously review. And you've heard me say this before. This is never going to be a one and done. This is something that you got to go back to. When I work with clients, or when I'm working with clients with teams, I'm back there every month reviewing what we said we were going to do, reviewing not only what we said we were going to do, the things that we were going to do, but also reviewing the behaviors. What did we sign up to? How are we behaving with each other? How are we working with each other? We said we were going to hold each other accountable. We said we were going to, move things along quickly. Let's score ourselves on that. And then so month on month that you're going back and you are just continuously reviewing, continuously assessing, and you're building, because you won't, I'm not a big believer in, from a corporate perspective. And Ty, I paid for some of these events that were kind of 1 or 2 day events, and people said, oh, that was just fantastic. That just changed the world. 3 months later, they're saying, you know what? Nothing really is different. So whatever we did back then mustn't have been any good. And maybe there was probably nothing wrong with what you did, but what you didn't do was review it. What you didn't do was go back and assess, what progress have we made? What have we done differently? How can we improve? And it's always saying, how can we raise the bar? How can we do it a little bit better? What would, if we were saying we're working at 60% of our potential, what was 70%? What would we have to do next month to be 70? And then you go to 80 and 90. And so you go, because it's all about layering one on top of the other. And it's just so important that you do that. And that continuous review is just a fundamental part of it. So there you are.
That's something I don't do enough of myself. I have a bad tendency to not go back with my team and do that. I have this tendency, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs do, that kind of once we put it out there, it's done. Once we say something or once we set the path, that everybody just continues to follow that path. And what we said, weeks or months ago is still applicable. And I think this is important because, in marketing and advertising especially, testing is so important. We have to come back and constantly review and look back and see what's going on and what's improving and what's not improving, and make changes and get better. And I'm kind of astonished when I look at this, because I think about it, I think I really apply this to marketing and advertising, but not as much to running a team, to managing a team. So this is a big point that I think I miss, and probably a lot of other entrepreneurs are guilty of as well.
Well, it would be something that I would see very regularly, and it doesn't matter what size the organization type. It really doesn't matter. If you don't continue to review, but you're not just reviewing the numbers, you're reviewing how we behave. I'm going to come out of the screen sharing. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, are we back in on screen?
We're back in.
Okay, but it's just so important, Ty, that we get into this culture of reviewing and analyzing what we're doing. But as I said, not just the numbers. It can't just be the numbers. It's also about how we're working together, how we're moving forward together. What are the things that are getting in our way? Because when you do that exercise about the accomplishments and disappointments, very often people will kind of say, well, the reason we didn't do so well last year was because of external. It was the market. It was the industry. It was whatever, right? But in actual fact, when you analyze it, most of the reasons for lack of success has been down to how we worked ourselves, how we didn't communicate, how we didn't liaise with each other, how we didn't define what success was, how we didn't determine how we are going to engage with each other. And it's quite extraordinary. I have never, ever done that exercise with a team where they've been able to turn around and say, actually, the disappointments had nothing to do with us. Yeah, it was all external, right? Never, ever, ever, right? And it is kind of a big moment, aha moment for people to say, you know something? I thought that a lot of the reasons that we didn't succeed last year were external. In actual fact, they were not. They were internal reasons. And if you can correct that, because it's the one thing we can control. We cannot control the economy, as God knows we all know. We cannot control what happens outside. We cannot control what our competitors and what other people are doing, but we can control what we're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. And, you know, a guy that I listen to on the sales side, Jordan Belfort, and, you know, that's one of the things he talks about when it comes to selling is that, hey, look, the one thing you can control is how many turns you take. You can't control what the outcome is. You can't control these other things. So you focus on what you can control. And you are so right. I think so many people blame failures, slow months, etc., on outside factors. And man, you really just laid out 5 not complicated things that all of us should be doing. That I think if we do, you know, having a complete vision, you know, choosing the right team to execute that vision, you know, having the right culture, giving them the environment to basically be able to execute on that vision, you know, offering proper coaching, not management, especially not micromanagement, but coaching them, empowering them, giving them the ability to execute upon the vision, and then continuously reviewing this process. I think these 5 things are just, they make so much sense. And when done, you, like you said, you control what's actually going on. You're focusing on what you can control. And I think if you do those things, you're not going to be as vulnerable to these outside factors coming in and having, you know, big effects on your business one way or the other.
And it is about, as you say, going back over and over and over again and revisiting it, you know, revisiting the vision so that people are very, very clear. Because, you know, you've got to continuously talk about it. If it isn't part of your conversation, it doesn't exist. If it isn't part of what you talk about on a day-by-day basis, it doesn't exist. It's the same when you're talking about vision. If you're not talking about behavior, then your culture doesn't exist. Or your culture would be whatever it's going to be, right? And, you know, so often when you talk to organizations, and I've had conversations with CEOs, and they say, you know, I don't really like the culture that's on the, you know, or in our branches or on the ground floor of our business or whatever. And the first thing I always say to them, listen, I tell you something, if you don't like the culture in some part of your organization, look in the mirror. Because
so true.
That's where it's coming from. And that can be a tough message to take. But if you think about organizations and you know, any organization that they've ever been part of, you look at how the top team works, that cascades right down through the organization. And it doesn't matter how big or how small. That's what happens. It cascades down through the rest of the organization. So the bit that we're in control of is what will determine the culture in the rest of the organization. And that's the bit that we can do. And as leaders, that's our responsibility.
It's a little scary because it makes you accountable, really, for what happens in the outcome. And, you know, it's so much easier to blame outside factors than be solely accountable, you know, but that's what it really comes down to, right? It's so much easier to blame these outside factors than being accountable. You know, Jacqueline had typed in the chat here on disappointments. I would say that finding the right team members has been challenging. Can you help address this? And actually, that's a really good question, Jacqueline, because I get that from a lot of our clients too, is finding the right team members. So what do you think about that, John? I mean, what kind of feedback advice do you have?
It's a big challenge because, I mean, and the reality is the chances of you getting it right first time out is pretty low, right? And also, when you know, because when you hire somebody, you can interview, you can assess them, you can do everything you like, you know, but when you just make the decision to hire somebody, there's still a step in the dark until they come in and they work with you. That's when you know whether you've made the right decision. You know, the interview process is great, but it can't answer, you know, is it absolutely the right fit? And you've got to watch it over a period of time and make decisions. And I know that I hired people into my team, particularly in the corporate world. And, you know, with the best of intention, you've gone through everything and you said, yeah, I reckon this guy, this girl is going to be a really good fit. Take them in and 6 months later, 4 months later, you're saying, you know, don't think it is. For whatever it is, there's the part of personality and it is more often to do with their personality and behavior than a skill set. And once you actually have identified that, then, okay, you've got to do what you can to correct it because that's your responsibility. You are responsible. You hire them. In this case, I hired them. I had to take responsibility for doing what I could to change the situation. But if I fundamentally have tried everything I can and I haven't been able to change the behavior, if that's the issue, then I've got to just move the person on. And that's just a fact of life, because it's, you know, what we're playing with is the entirety of the business, and what you're playing with is achieving the vision and the mission and all of the other people. And you can't risk it for everybody to have somebody in that just isn't a right fit. So you know, there's no simple solution to it. It's been clear in your own mind, firstly, exactly what am I looking for, not only in terms of skills and knowledge and expertise and all of those things, because they're kind of the easy bit, but also being clear in your own mind, what sort of person do I want to get, and making the best judgment you can through the interview process about that, but accepting that when you come to hire, it's still a step in the dark. But if you've made the decision and you brought the person in, and having done what you can to do it, and that has got to be the litmus test. I have done everything that I could to make the situation right. If it's still, you can't change it, you've got to be tough enough, and you've got to be brave enough, and you've got to be honest enough to actually say, this is not a fit, and we part company.
Yeah, that's some great points. You know, if you have any other questions, go ahead and type them in the chat. I want to make sure we can get them addressed. John's a hard guy to be able to, you know, get into a presentation and spend time with him like this. So you have a rare opportunity to get those questions answered. You know, I have a guy that in one of my masterminds, and his name is David Weinman, W-E-I-N-M-A-N. And he's got such a brilliant strategy of what he does. And they've got these really intricate personality tests that they have employees do. And they do these tests for other companies. And this isn't just like, you know, a basic personality profile test. It's very, very in-depth. And it's interesting because we go through now having our team do this, and it helps us better interact with our team members because we understand their personality. We can better understand where they're coming from and making sure they're a good fit within the organization. But this has been a big change for us with salesmen, because what we'll do is we bring in salesmen. It's like a revolving door. They come and they go, you know, and that's a big field that a lot of people have a hard time hiring in. But the people that come and are successful, it's interesting because we can model that personality. And then the next people that come in, we have them take the same test looking for that particular personality that's proven to be very effective. And along the line of what you're saying of being accountable and doing everything you can do, you know, those are some other simple things that we do that I think are very effective to be able to narrow down what it is that is working versus not working in a person. And like you said, part of it is personality, but a lot of it has to do with working with other people on the team. And there's no way, as far as I know, to measure that. You know, that's just about getting them in and seeing how they fit. But that's at least something we could do earlier on to see, are we bringing in the right personality that historically works well within that position. So that's something that's worked well for us. But the interaction between the team, you just never know.
Absolutely. But I mean, one of the things that I'm using it in my coaching business, and I recommend it to companies to use as well, is that I, with everybody that I coach, I do an assessment of their emotional intelligence, right? And if you think about it, you know, 20 years ago, emotional intelligence was not really being talked about in any shape or form. Everybody that got measured, if they were assessed going in for a job, it was about IQ, not emotional intelligence. And now it would be accepted by, you know, far brighter people than me, that if you're looking at a balance between IQ and EI, it would be 80% EI and 20% IQ. So that's a big shift in that period of time. And the reason for that is because what emotional intelligence is measuring is how you are likely to behave in different circumstances, and how you are likely to behave. Your behavior, you know, has a consequence because it's got your actions, and the actions determine the results. So there's a direct correlation. But it also will give you a fair indication how somebody is likely to behave. So it's a good tool to use, and it's something that I would highly recommend.
How do you do that? Do you have a test that you have them take, or how do you what do you use for that?
It's an online assessment that I use with clients to do that. And you know, but there are emotional intelligence assessments that are available, and it's certainly something that is very valuable to have, because then you start to look and you get a very good, kind of shot of what their personality is like. And that's helpful.
Yeah.
Ty, you still take, when you're hiring somebody, you still take that step in the dark when you hire somebody else.
Oh, absolutely. But as you said, I mean, to take full accountability, right, and to do the 5 steps, and to think in that manner where it's full accountability, you still have to do everything you could do. And emotional, I mean, these things we're talking about are not things that your average entrepreneur does, and they're things that you can do to a best of your ability. Control the outcome of that hire, and then the rest of it, like we talked about. I mean, the interaction with the team and these other variables, you never know what you're going to get. So you can do what you could do, but you're right. I mean, in the end, let the chips fall where they may, per se.
But when I go back to the 5 C's about the creation, the vision, choosing the team, determining the culture, coaching the team, and continuously review, I really want to make sure that everybody tuning in today and listening to this subsequently realize I am not, and I've said it, I know I've said it, but I'm going to say it again. I am not saying this is for something for large organizations only. It is most definitely not. It is for any organization of any size. And while, the way I've laid them out there and talked about it, as you said, they ain't rocket science. They ain't complicated. And they are simple, but that doesn't make it easy, right? Because it's adherence to them, but they are not complicated. They are things that can be done by anybody in business. And, as entrepreneurs setting out a business, or whether you're in the corporate world, these are 5 steps you need to take and do them again and again and again. It's never, ever done. It's always got to be, gone after. There's always room for improvement. There's always opportunity. There's always, there's growth in individuals. And all you want to do is make sure that you're leveraging off the growth of those individuals.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today. I mean, this was a powerful presentation, the 5 C's of high performance with John Murphy. John, let me ask you a question. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in doing some business with you? I mean, what's their next step if they want to learn more about what we talked about here and get in touch with you to do so?
Well, I'd be delighted to have a conversation with anybody who'd want to kind of hop on and just have a chat about it. The best way to get me, they can go to my website, which is www.johnmurphyinternational.com, or they can email me at john@johnmurphyinternational.com. So delighted to hear from anybody. Be happy to answer any questions. And, if we take it further, we take it further. If we don't, it's been great to connect anyway.
Okay, well, listen, I appreciate you joining us. This is the first. I do webinars all the time. I've never done a webinar like this where I'm on screen, having a conversation. This has been fantastic. I've learned a lot. I've taken a lot of notes. I even wrote down that book that you mentioned, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, which will be something I'll be reading. So I really appreciate you. That sounds like a good book, right?
Great book, great book. Highly recommend. He's a great writer, Patrick Lencioni. I highly recommend him.
So I'll check that out, see what other books he's got. So I personally gained a lot from this, and I think a lot of other people have as well. So I really appreciate you carving the time out of your evening to come join us. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So thank you again so much for taking the time to join us. And for everybody on the call, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I hope, as always, that you walk away with good, actionable information. I know I did. I hope you got the same. So I want to thank everybody very much for taking the time to join us today. And John, again, thank you so much for your contribution. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Ty.
All right. Thanks, everybody.